It was a quiet Tuesday morning when 26-year-old Lisa Dorsey realized something was wrong. Her mother, Helen Dorsey, had not returned any of her calls in 2 days. That was strange. Helen was the kind of mother who always answered quickly, even if it was just to say she was busy. Lisa tried to stay calm. She told herself maybe her mom was just visiting a friend or had lost her phone. But deep down, something felt off. Helen lived alone in a small white cottage on the edge of town. She had retired early from teaching and spent most of her time gardening or volunteering at the local church. She wasn't the kind of woman to leave without telling anyone. Lisa drove straight to the house, hoping to find her mother sipping tea in the garden. The front door was locked. Lisa knocked, then rang the bell, but there was no answer. She called her again. Nothing. She walked around the house and peered through the windows. The living room looked normal. A folded blanket on the couch, the TV remote placed neatly on the coffee table. Nothing looked out of place, but Lisa's unease grew stronger. She drove to the police station to file a missing person report. The officer at the desk asked routine questions. When did you last see her? Was she on any medication? Had she been upset or stressed lately? No, Lisa said. She was fine the last time I saw her. Happy even. The police promised to check on the house and open an investigation. Days passed. Flyers were printed and distributed. Friends and neighbors helped search nearby parks and trails. Still, there was no sign of Helen. Lisa felt helpless. Nights became long, full of nightmares and unanswered questions. Then, 10 days after Helen disappeared, Lisa received a phone call from Detective Ray Holman. "Miss Dorsey," he said, "we found something. We need you to come down to the station." Lisa's heart dropped. "Is it my mother?" she asked, her voice shaking. The detective didn't answer directly. "Please come. We'll explain everything here." At the station, Lisa sat in a small room with gray walls and no windows. Detective Holman entered, followed by another officer. He sat down, cleared his throat, and looked at her with a serious face. "A suitcase was found near the woods this morning. A large red one. Inside, we found a body. It has been confirmed as your mother." Lisa's world spun. "A suitcase?" she whispered. "Yes," the detective said gently. "We believe she was killed in her body was placed in the suitcase before being left in the woods." Lisa covered her face with her hands. Her legs felt numb. This couldn't be real. Her sweet, kind mother? Dead? Stuffed into a suitcase like garbage? Detective Holman continued, "We're starting a full homicide investigation. And Lisa, we're going to need to ask you some hard questions." Lisa slowly looked up, her eyes full of tears and confusion. Who would do this to her? That was the question. But the answer, when it came, would shake Lisa's world even more than the suitcase already had. The news of Helen Dorsey's body being found in a suitcase hit the small town of Maple Hollow like a thunderstorm. Everyone was shocked. Helen was loved by many, friendly, kind, always helping at the church and baking cookies for neighbors. No one could believe that someone had killed her, let alone dumped her like trash. Lisa was crushed. Her eyes stayed red and swollen for days. She barely ate, barely slept. The image of her mother, stuffed in a suitcase, haunted her dreams. She wanted answers. She wanted justice. And most of all, she wanted to know who could have done such a horrible thing. The police were working fast. Detective Ray Holman and his partner, Detective Eliza Grant, began interviewing everyone close to Helen. That included neighbors, church friends, and family. Naturally, Lisa was one of the first people they turned to. "We're not accusing you," Detective Holman told her during their second meeting. "But we need to ask, did your mother have any enemies? Any fights with anyone? Anything strange happened before she disappeared?" Lisa shook her head. "No, she was fine. The last time I saw her, we had lunch together. She even gave me some tomatoes from her garden." The detectives scribbled notes. But there was something in their faces. Something that made Lisa feel like they didn't fully believe her. Later that evening, Lisa decided to return to her mother's house. She hadn't been back since the discovery. It was painful, but something told her she needed to go. Maybe she would find something the police missed. The house was cold and quiet. Everything was in its place, exactly how her mother liked it. Lisa walked slowly through the rooms. She opened drawers, checked closets. Nothing looked wrong until she got to her mother's bedroom. There, inside the closet, Lisa noticed an empty spot where a suitcase used to be. A red one. Her heart stopped. She remembered it clearly. That suitcase had belonged to her father before he passed away. Her mother never used it, but she kept it for sentimental reasons. Lisa stepped back, her hands trembling. Was that the same suitcase the police found in the woods? She left the house in a rush and drove straight to the station. I think I've seen that suitcase before, she told Detective Holman. It belonged to my dad. My mom kept it in her closet. Now it's gone. Holman raised an eyebrow. That could be important. Are you sure it's the same one? I think so. Big, red, with a small tear on the handle. The detective nodded. We'll need you to come take a look at it. The next morning, Lisa was brought to the forensics office. She stood in front of the suitcase, which was now clean and emptied. It was worn out, with the same tear on the handle. Her voice was barely a whisper. That's the one. The detectives exchanged glances. Then, the killer had access to your mother's house, Eliza Grant said. Someone she knew. Someone close. Lisa felt a chill crawl up her spine. But she didn't know that the biggest shock was still coming. Because hidden in the lining of the suitcase, the forensic team had found a small plastic tag with a fingerprint. One that matched someone already in the police system. And that someone was someone Lisa knew very well. Lisa couldn't sleep. The image of her mother's body inside the red suitcase haunted her mind. But what scared her more was the detective's words. The killer had access to your mother's house. Someone she knew. Someone close. Now she waited anxiously to hear the results of the fingerprint the police had found on the plastic tag inside the suitcase. Lisa hoped it would lead them to some stranger, a burglar, a runaway criminal, anyone but someone from her mother's life. Detective Holman called her the next afternoon. Lisa, we've identified the fingerprint, he said. We need you to come in. Lisa's stomach twisted. Is it someone I know? There was a long pause on the line. Yes. She felt like the air had been knocked out of her chest. At the station, the detectives looked serious. A quiet tension filled the room. Detective Grant placed a folder on the table and slid it toward Lisa. The fingerprint belongs to your cousin, Natalie Dorsey, she said. Lisa blinked. Natalie? That's not possible. Natalie Dorsey, her cousin, was 29 years old, bold, confident, and had always been the black sheep of the family. She had a troubled past, drug problems in her 20s, some small-time thefts, but she had gotten clean. Or so everyone thought. She hadn't visited Aunt Helen much in recent months, but they were family. She wouldn't hurt her, would she? We're not saying she's guilty yet, Holman explained. But the print is clear, and it was in the suitcase. We also found a hair strand. DNA testing is in progress. We're bringing Natalie in for questioning. Lisa left the station with her mind spinning. She couldn't believe it. Natalie? The wild cousin who once stole a neighbor's car for a joyride when they were teens? She had a bad past, sure. But murder? Later that evening, Lisa got a call from her Aunt Marie, Natalie's mother. Did you hear about Natalie? Her aunt asked, her voice shaky. Yes, Lisa replied. She's being questioned by the police. Her fingerprint was found in the suitcase. Aunt Marie burst into tears. Lisa, please. She said she didn't do it. She said she was only at your mother's house once last month to borrow money. That's it. Lisa didn't know what to believe. She wanted to trust her cousin, but the evidence was piling up. Her mother had been found in a suitcase from her own house. Now Natalie's fingerprint was on it. Why would it be there if she had nothing to do with it? The next morning, Lisa returned to her mother's home. She walked through the kitchen and stopped at the counter. There was a yellow notepad where her mother often wrote shopping lists or reminders. A page was half torn, but some writing was still visible. Lisa leaned in and read it. Natalie coming Thursday. Says she's in trouble. Wants money again. I don't feel right about it. Lisa's heart sank. She called Detective Holman immediately and told him what she had found. By nightfall, Natalie had been arrested. Not charged, but held for questioning. Her face was pale, her hands shaking, as the officers led her away. Lisa watched from behind a window, her heart pounding. The cousin she'd grown up with was now a suspect in her mother's murder. But this case was far from over. Because Natalie was about to make a confession, a partial one, that would turn the entire case upside down. Natalie Dorsey sat in the police interrogation room, her eyes sunken and her hands cuffed to the table. The room was cold and bare, with nothing but a ticking wall clock and two detectives watching her closely. She looked exhausted, like she hadn't slept in days. Detective Holman leaned forward. We found your fingerprint inside the suitcase your aunt's body was in. And now we have a note written by her, saying you were asking for money. Natalie, you need to tell us the truth. Natalie looked up slowly. I didn't kill her, she whispered. But I was there. Detective Grant scribbled something in her notebook. Go on. Natalie took a deep breath. I went to see Aunt Helen because I needed help. I was behind on rent, and I owed some people money. She said she didn't want to get involved. Said I had to take responsibility for my own mess. Did you argue? Holman asked. Natalie nodded. A little. I got angry. I yelled. She told me to leave. I slammed a door. That's probably when my print got on the suitcase. I saw it in her hallway. I never touched it before. Did anyone else come to the house while you were there? Asked Grant. Natalie paused. Yes, she said softly. That's what I didn't say before. The detective sat up straighter. Natalie continued. As I was leaving, someone else pulled into the driveway. It was Lisa. The room fell silent. Holman narrowed his eyes. Lisa Dorsey? Her daughter? Natalie nodded. Yes. I didn't want to get involved, so I didn't say anything earlier. I thought she just came to visit. But something about the way she looked at me that day, it gave me a bad feeling. The detectives exchanged glances. Why didn't you mention this before? Asked Grant. I was scared, Natalie said. I thought you'd blame me. But I didn't kill Aunt Helen. I swear it. I left before anything happened. But now I wonder if Lisa stayed behind. Or maybe they argued after I left. That night, Detective Holman called Lisa back into the station. She arrived, confused and anxious. Did Natalie confess? Sort of, Holman said. She admitted she was at your mother's house the day she disappeared. But she says she saw you, arriving as she left. Lisa blinked. What? No, that's not true. I wasn't there. We checked your phone records, Holman said. Your location shows your phone was near your mother's house that day, around the same time Natalie was there. Lisa looked down at her hands. That's impossible. Lisa, Detective Grant said gently, you need to be honest with us. If there's something you're hiding, now is the time to tell us. Lisa's hands started to shake. I didn't kill my mother, she said quickly. I loved her. We were close. Holman nodded. Then help us understand why Natalie says you were there, and why the note she wrote says she was afraid. Lisa opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Her breathing grew heavy. Her eyes filled with tears. Was there a fight, Lisa? Grant asked. Did something happen between you and your mother that day? Lisa looked up slowly, her face pale. Yes, she whispered. We argued. But I swear, I didn't mean for anything bad to happen. The room went silent again. Go on, Holman said. Tell us everything. And in the next few minutes, Lisa would reveal a truth that no one was ready for. One that would change everything about the case. Lisa sat in the small, windowless room, her shoulders trembling as she wiped tears from her cheeks. The detectives waited, pens in hand, silent. The only sound was the soft hum of the overhead light and Lisa's shaky breath. I didn't plan it, Lisa began. It wasn't supposed to happen like that. Just tell us what happened that day, Detective Holman said calmly. Lisa stared at the table as if she could see the past right there in front of her. I went to my mom's house that afternoon. Yes, Natalie was leaving as I arrived. She looked upset. I thought maybe they had argued, but I didn't ask. I was already dealing with my own problems. What kind of problems? Asked Detective Grant. Lisa swallowed hard. Money. My job had cut my hours. I was behind on my car loan. I was embarrassed to ask my mom for help again, but I didn't know what else to do. She paused, voice cracking. I asked her for money. Just something to get by? She refused. She said she had already helped me too many times. Said I needed to grow up, stop depending on her. She said I was turning out like Natalie. Holman raised an eyebrow. How did that make you feel? Lisa looked up. Angry. Hurt. I'd been struggling, and she made me feel like a failure. We yelled at each other. I told her she didn't care about me. She told me to leave. She closed her eyes, reliving the moment. She tried to walk past me toward the front door. I grabbed her arm. She pushed me back. I don't know what happened exactly. I shoved her. She lost her balance and hit her head on the edge of the table. There was silence. Lisa opened her eyes. She fell. She wasn't moving. I called her name. I shook her. There was blood. I panicked. You didn't call an ambulance? Detective Grant asked. I should have, Lisa whispered. I was scared. I thought no one would believe it was an accident, especially after Natalie had just been there. I knew people would blame me. Detective Holman's voice was calm but firm. What did you do next? Lisa wiped her nose. I dragged her into the hallway. That's when I saw the old red suitcase. I don't know why. I wasn't thinking clearly. I put her in it. I zipped it up. I loaded it into my trunk. Detective Grant sat back, stunned. And then, I drove to the woods, the ones near Miller's Creek. I dragged the suitcase into the trees and left it there. I thought no one would find it. But someone did, Holman said. A hiker. Lisa nodded. I know. Grant leaned forward. Did you do anything else to cover it up? I went home, took a shower, cleaned my car. I thought if I stayed quiet, they'd blame Natalie or think my mom just vanished. You lied when you filed the missing person report, Holman said. You knew she was already dead. Lisa didn't answer. Her silence said enough. Holman stood. Lisa Dorsey, you're under arrest for the murder of Helen Dorsey. You have the right to remain silent. As the words echoed around her, Lisa barely heard them. Her body went limp. All she could think about was her mother's face. The last look of shock before she hit the table. It was an accident, but it was also a lie that turned into a cover-up. And now, a life was gone forever. News of Lisa Dorsey's arrest spread fast through Maple Hollow. The quiet daughter of a beloved former schoolteacher had been hiding. A terrible truth. People couldn't believe it. Neighbors whispered. Church friends cried. Headlines read, Daughter confesses to putting mother in suitcase after fatal argument. The town was heartbroken and divided. Some believed Lisa's story, that it was an accident, a moment of panic. Others saw it as cold and unforgivable. In jail, Lisa sat alone in her cell, her heart heavy with guilt. The cold gray walls around her didn't compare to the weight she felt inside. She had never meant to hurt her mother. But now, all that mattered was what came next. Detective Holman and Detective Grant wrapped up the investigation. The evidence now matched Lisa's confession. Her phone location matched the time of death. Security footage showed her car leaving town toward the woods. A neighbor later remembered seeing her loading something large into her trunk. And forensic testing confirmed her fingerprints on the suitcase zipper and handle. Even Natalie was cleared. She was released from custody, though not without deep wounds of her own. She gave a short statement to the press. I made mistakes in my past, but I didn't kill my aunt. I was trying to get better. I wish I'd said something sooner. Maybe Helen would still be alive. Lisa's trial was scheduled quickly due to the public attention. The prosecutors charged her with manslaughter, not murder. Her confession helped reduce the charge, and the lack of premeditation worked in her favor. But the cover-up, the suitcase, the lies, the fake missing person report made things worse. In court, Lisa sat silently as the judge read the charges. Her lawyer spoke of stress, panic, and fear. But the prosecution focused on the coldness of hiding. Her mother's body, instead of seeking help. Helen's sister, Lisa's Aunt Marie, spoke during the hearing. I lost my best friend and my niece at the same time, she said, voice trembling. Helen loved Lisa. If Lisa had just called for help, things could have been different. The courtroom was silent. Lisa was sentenced to 15 years in prison, with a chance for parole after 8. When she heard the sentence, Lisa didn't cry. She simply lowered her head and whispered, I'm sorry, Mom. Back in Maple Hollow, Helen Dorsey was buried with flowers, prayers, and sorrow. Her funeral was packed with people who remembered her smile, her kind words, her quiet strength. And Lisa? From her prison cell, she wrote a letter every week. Not to anyone in particular, just letters to her mother. Dear Mom, I wish I could take back that day. I wish I walked away instead of getting angry. I wish I said sorry instead of shouting. I hope one day, wherever you are, you can forgive me. No one knows if those letters were ever read. But Lisa kept writing them. It was all she could do. Years passed. The world moved on. But for Lisa Dorsey, time felt frozen. Prison wasn't easy. The days were long, the nights lonely. Lisa kept to herself, working in the prison library and attending therapy sessions. She didn't argue. She didn't complain. She just served her time in silence, carrying the heavy burden of her guilt. She never stopped writing letters to her mother. Every week, she poured her heart onto paper, as if her words could somehow cross into heaven. Most of the letters began the same way. Dear Mom, I'm still so sorry. Over time, those letters filled up a small box she kept in her cell. No one else read them. They weren't meant for the world, just for the woman she had loved and lost. Back in Maple Hollow, life slowly returned to normal. Helen Dorsey's house was sold, the garden overgrown. The townspeople still remembered her fondly, especially the children she used to teach. The church kept a bench in her memory with a small plaque. In loving memory of Helen Dorsey, a teacher, a mother, a light. Natalie stayed clean after that. The entire case had shaken her to her core. She started working with at-risk youth in a nearby town, giving speeches about second chances and the damage silence can cause. I could have spoken up sooner, she often told teens. Maybe I could have saved her. Don't ever wait to do the right thing. 8 years later, Lisa was granted parole. The hearing was quiet. Her behavior in prison had been perfect. Her therapist wrote letters of support. Even her Aunt Marie, who once spoke harshly against her, came to the hearing. I believe Helen would have forgiven her, Marie said tearfully. And I believe Lisa has paid her price. Lisa left prison with a small bag and the box of letters. She didn't return to Maple Hollow. The memories there were too heavy. Instead, she moved to a quiet town nearby, took a job at a bookstore, and started over. She never tried to forget what happened. Instead, she used it as her guide. She joined a local grief support group and shared her story, not as an excuse, but as a warning. Anger lasts a moment, she told them, but regret lasts forever. She volunteered at a shelter, helped women in crisis, and mentored troubled young girls. Many didn't know her past. Those who did often looked at her with a mix of pity and respect. She didn't ask for forgiveness, but some gave it freely. One day, she returned to Maple Hollow quietly. She visited the bench at the church garden, the one with her mother's name. She sat there in silence for a long time, watching the wind move through the trees. Then she opened the box. She placed all the letters on the bench, one by one. Her hands were gentle, her eyes full. "Goodbye, Mom," she whispered. "I'll carry your love, and my mistake, with me, always." She walked away with her head low, but her heart just a little lighter. Because some wounds never fully heal. But sometimes, we learn to live with them.